Hello and welcome to this episode of Mind the Gap, making education work across the globe with me, Tom Sherrington, and my great partner, Emma Turner. Hello, Emma.
Oh, hello, Tom. I'm so looking forward to this episode because our chat off air with our guest has just been fabulous. So I'm really looking forward to getting him on to have a chat about it. I'm very excited tonight.
Yeah, so a really warm welcome to Sufian Sadiq, who is on Twitter as Unleashing Me, and I'm going to ask you about that. But Sufian, welcome to Mind the Gap.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be on here with you, and thank you, Emma and Tom, for having me.
Yeah, so people, I mean, I've been aware of you and followed you and been sort of exchanging ideas with you for a few years now, but your official job title, as far as I can tell, unless it's changed again, is Director of the Teaching School at the Chiltern Learning Trust. But on LinkedIn, it also says something about you being the Director of Talent and Teaching School. So I want to know if that's the current. So tell people kind of what your kind of current work is.
I work in Chiltern Learning Trust. I'm a director at Chiltern Learning Trust. It's a kind of a medium-sized MAT based primarily in Bedfordshire. I look after the teaching school. Over the last couple of years, almost accidentally kind of started to do a lot of work around areas of my own personal interest around marketing and recruitment. So we do a lot of recruitment. So I kind of made that talent part up myself and just added it on my LinkedIn. It's not gone through any formal process or anything, but I'm just that kind of guy. I wake up and decide what I want to be, and I kind of roll with that.
I love it. I love the idea that like a school or a trust can have like a director of talent. I think you should. I think that's it, because that's.
It reminds me of kids from Fame.
It's a great opportunity because it's one of those things when because you're on LinkedIn, and as educators on LinkedIn, it's kind of a bit of a weird place because you don't know what the etiquette is. And I think as soon as I put the word talent in, suddenly people feel like they can approach me about jobs, which is great, and therefore actually it's doing its job.
You've got to watch out on LinkedIn because ever so often someone's gonna contact you and say, "Hey, Sufian, great to connect. I feel there's real synergy with what with your output and mine. Let's try to sync up. Let's hop on a call." That's the whole language.
I get about 25 of those a day.
Let's jump on a call and exchange synergies. Anyway,
let's not.
No, let's not. So let's talk about the real deal, because I mean, you're one of these people that to me is like, kind of, and it keeps the system working. There are a lot of people who I think make a big play for what they do, and sometimes I feel like, I don't know, it feels too sort of extreme or out there, and there's this kind of, I would say, and I mean this in a totally the right spirit, which is that Chiltern Learning Trust for me, from my contact with you, has been like, that's where the action is. It's like a regular set of schools in a doing the hard work, doing the heavy lifting of the whole system, which is taking regular schools in everyday situations and lots of challenges and doing it incredibly well. And to me, leading that is probably one of the most difficult and important jobs in our whole system. And there's you doing that. So I just think it's really important to celebrate that. So, I mean, how long have you been working there now?
So this is kind of into my 5th year. And I kind of came across where a role is, and it kind of sums up our organization. My CEO approached me and he said, I'd be really interested for you to work for us. And I was at a sixth form college at the time, 13 years at that sixth form college. And he said, I'll be in touch soon. He was in touch and he said, right, the job's closing in a few days' time. I want you to apply for it. It's the head of teaching school. I said, okay, I'm up for that. Just have one question. I don't know what a teaching school is. And he said, no, it's stuff with CPD. I said, I've never done that either. I'm not quite afraid with it. And he said, who cares? It doesn't really matter. Yeah, we'll make it up as we go. You apply for it because I recruit on attitude and I don't recruit on experience. So you rock up, and if you're the right guy on the day, and we'll take it forward and we'll make it up as we go. And that's what we've done. We are now probably one of the largest teaching schools in the country. We cover 2 teaching school hubs. We do thousands of MPQs and ECTs go through our system. We have 4 skits within that, 2 behavior hubs within that. Hopefully, if things go to plan, we've put in a bid for research school. So lots of activity. And through that vehicle, I think for me, it's allowed me to really explore parts of who I am as a person. And one of those things is, I don't know, I see myself as a disruptor to the system. Some people have huge career ambitions of becoming something. I wake up knowing I just want to be a pain in the backside for people who want to carry on doing things that aren't right. And I'm happy being that guy. And I'm able to bring the teaching school into the moral element of work that we want to do. So we've committed over the last few years huge amounts in equity, diversity, and inclusion, but also it allows me to do things that are, we make things up. And when I say we make things up, it's, we do interesting CPD in a jazz club, CPD in a petting farm, because I've got young kids and actually petting farm is where I spend a lot of my time. Let's do a CPD there, that'll be fun. Let's do it in a jazz club in the evening, that'll be fun. And we make things up as we go. We look at the market, and those things are really interesting. But I'm also able to make sure that safeguarding training for all the charities in Luton is free. That they don't, if I've got spare seats on a first aid course, it's free for churches, mosques, charities in our area. So we make things up, but we make things up with a real moral purpose, and we're value driven, and we want to make a difference to the system. We want to make a change, and that's exciting.
Right, that's great. I love it.
So you say disruptor, Sufian. I think innovator. Just because you seem to do things very differently, but like you say, guided by this real want to make a difference. So what's been your favourite or best? I'd say, you'd say disruption, I'd say innovation. So what's been the thing that you think, that's really worked, or really proud of that, or that had a really big impact?
I think the equality, diversity, and inclusion work, I think it's fair to say we've made a mark. And I think it started off with kind of almost heartache around the whole situation, the way it is nationally, to saying, actually, what I'll do is I'll commit to doing a session a week, and I'll do my part. And I'm going to do that wherever in the country, whoever invites us, and we're going to base it on one principle. We're not going to charge for this piece of work, because it's something that we want to do from our teaching school. And that's kind of been an area that's really probably become quite synonymous with our work as a teaching school. We do lots on that area. And I think when I look at the success of that area, the success, naturally what happens is it starts off with me, and I'm probably, I don't like what he's done to Twitter, and some of his views are crazy, but I kind of wake up some days feeling very Elon Musky in my thinking. I make up things in my head, and I feel like I have the solutions to fix anything and everything with a few clicks. And I'm able to do that around the work in equity. It started with we'll do a few presentations, and it went into, actually, I'm going to contact every big organization in this country, and I'm going to ask for an audience with their CEOs, with the heads of the organizations, because I want to make sure I have an audience with them. And I think that was incredible, that as a piece of work. And probably we woke up, I remember during the pandemic, my CEO and I were having a discussion. He said we should probably do some CPD. And that's, I think the thing I like about us is, as an organization, somebody else would have stopped at, right, we'll do a session. We then say, no, actually, I want to do a session every single day of this pandemic. Now, I thought it was a 2-week lockdown at that stage. I didn't So I had planned 10. We did over 100 CPDs, over 27,000 people tuned in from 87 countries into our CPDs. Now, it was absurd, it was crazy, but it was free and we wanted to give back to the system, and so many incredible speakers contributed. You guys contributed to that and contributed to that whole thing. And I think that was a real special moment in time to be able to say, wow, that was impressive.
That's great. And that only happens because you have this amazing gift for creating that sort of, well, moral purpose. You make it hard to say no. But you allow, what you do though is that you allow people to have a vehicle for giving back in a way which they might not know how to do. So you set up a process and say, we're doing this for free, would you like to be part of it? And you would think, oh, why wouldn't I want to be part of it? But I wouldn't have known how to do that without that. And it's the same. I love this about you. So one of the things that we're planning, aren't we, for next year is a program for school leaders to talk about school improvement and teaching and learning. And this, you approached this with me. You said, because we did some work together where we made these videos of your teachers in your trust doing these lessons, and then me doing some coaching, which was great. And you can see that, and some of that's on my website. But this is great. So I'll tell you what happened is that I felt that you did all the work, you outlaid all the money to employ the camera crew and all the editing, and you've paid for it all. And I just rocked up and did the sessions. And so I was saying I should pay for some of that. And you're saying, no, I tell you what, instead of paying us, why don't we do this whole other thing where we have these free training days for people to come, and we'll make it totally free for them. And we'll do, and I was thinking, well, what an amazing instinct that you have to think about that. And so that's what we're going to be doing. We haven't announced it yet, except I just have, but we haven't recruited to it yet, but we will be. But so where does that come from? That spirit? Not everybody has that.
If you do good, I'm a genuine believer, and it's massive. We're probably a faith element where that concept of actually giving charity doesn't diminish your wealth in any way. Giving back doesn't ever reduce what we have. And for me, that's always been the fact that actually I could have taken a fairly large sum of money from you and said, right, that was your half and that's perfectly fine. And the idea that actually one of the things that there's so many schools out there that want to access brilliant school improvement CPD, but don't have the CPD budgets. Let's go out and help them. Let's make a difference to people. And I think some of that comes from lived experiences. I think being someone that comes from a family that's a migrant family into Great Britain, that have come here. My parents came here for a better life for all of us. Growing up in poverty, Luton has its own challenges, and we faced perhaps some of the extremities of those challenges growing up. And when you grow up and when you are probably at a period of time the only one that's kind of made it forward, you carry a massive duty of, I've got to give back to my community, I've got to give back to the others, because I can suddenly, I'm on a platform. I was the only one, and it sounds silly, but at one stage I was the only guy from my mates that was wearing a suit, and that was an achievement. I have a job where I wear a suit because others are either unemployed or in prison or doing totally wrong things in life. That being able to say, right, actually, I've got this real moral responsibility and duty to give back, and teaching allows us to do that. But beyond teaching, I've dedicated a huge amount of time. I'm a serial kind of board member on almost anything related to poverty and equity. So Luton Food Bank, Level Trust is a uniform charity. We provide uniforms to those that can't afford them. Luton Town Football Club, again, the football club's in the heart of the community, but making sure access to the poorest kids, and football isn't for those just in middle-class villages around Luton, but the poorest kids miss out. we've got 3,000 kids getting access to sports through Luton Town. I'm involved in Culture Trust UK, which is all about the museums and the arts and the theatre, and again, making access to those that can't afford it to things that people have started to define in education as being cultural capital, but a cultural capital for some. So being a part of that board. Working Options is a charity, again, that started from Luton with some incredibly powerful ex-pupils that went to college and wrote back to us saying, I want to give back. And what emerged from there was this charity that now has Facebook supporting it and Google supporting it. And it's about 16 to 19-year-olds and helping them. And then going out to Africa, I've spent a lot of time in Malawi, probably made 13 visits to Malawi and doing a lot of teacher development in Malawi. And those experiences really shape, I think, an individual. I've done a lot. Luton has been in the heart of the Islamic kind of religious extremism challenges, the far-right challenges. There's a very prominent far-right organization, and I went to school with, I'm the same age range as the leader of that organization, same age range as the leader on the other side, on the faith element. So lots on community cohesion. So I'm very active in our community, and for me, the work allows me to.
I'm just going to sort of just pause the breath there. I'm exhausted. I'm just thinking I've wasted my whole life. It's just, that's amazing. I mean, it really is. I think it's just really extraordinary. So, I mean, what do you make of that? What do you make of?
Oh, I'm just thinking. I don't know. I lived in Luton for a while, you know. Just thinking when you were talking to me, I was thinking I used to live on Milliners Way, around the back of the mosque near Sainsbury's. That's where I used to live. And I was just thinking there about the reach of your work, and it just kind of pulls into focus the wider impact that an education establishment can have when it is truly at the heart of the community. So there'll be people listening to this that are thinking, I want to do the kind of work that Sufian's doing. So how did you start to build that kind of network? How did you go from teaching school to absolute centered heart of your community? How did you build that model?
I think it's starting with the community first. I think one of the things that is really hard sometimes, and it happens naturally, teaching is largely a profession with, well, the way it used to be, and I know things are very difficult financially now for people, but people are predominantly middle class. People who serve in inner city areas, in areas of deprivation, naturally, often either they live there when they're ECTs and KTs, but kind of have moved out. Luton probably is very typical of the fact that around the UK, you'll see many towns and cities like Luton where actually the teacher population descends in on the town at 7:30 in the morning, but most of them live in the villages around a place like Luton. And that's really the key, being a part of that community. And sometimes it's really easy for you to be able to drive in and drive out and not have any idea what it's like to be a child in that community. I went to Chiltern High School for Boys, which is a school within our trust. I trained with Chiltern Training Group, which is now the teaching school that I have the privilege and fortune of managing. And I went to Luton Sixth Form College, where I taught for 13 years. Those things helped me naturally because I stayed within that community, but also living in the community, knowing and seeing people on a day-to-day basis, you understand that actually when they leave the school gates, the challenges don't end. I've got to do something about food for them. So we run a curry kitchen every Friday in Luton, and we've been doing that for several years, because actually kids leave out of school and some kids have no access to a hot meal. And we say, right, actually it's takeaway Friday. Well, actually we've converted that as an idea and said, those kids who can't afford it, we're going to do a curry kitchen every week in Luton. So we do loads of ideas, but when you live in the community, when they leave the gates, they've not left you, because you leave. I walk back into the community and kids will see sir in the supermarket, sir in the street, sir in the mosque. And therefore that element, you become a part of that community. And I think what probably I have greatest respect for is how our CEO, Adrian Rogers, Lorraine Hughes, our deputy CEO, they've immersed themselves. Lorraine's, again, a Luton girl that's gone to our schools, trained with CTG. And then Adrian's from Central Beds, but has come in and he's turned up, and I always take the main, but he turns up to the opening of an envelope in Luton, and he's there when it matters. It doesn't matter, high profile, low profile, big event, small event. If somebody invites him, he's there. And that makes a difference, because the kids believe in you, the parents believe in you, the governors, the community is behind you, and you can make a real change. And I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the strongest schools in the town now sit within the trust, because actually we've listened to people and we take on our most critical voices, and that's really important. The most ardent critics of our CEO and our trust are chairs of our governing boards. And that's important, because you can push them away, but we've said actually we want the community involved. We want it to be reflective of the community we serve, and we want those that don't just nod along, those that challenge us to be better. And that's really coming through in some of our...
I'll ask you about this thing, because I want to really explore this, because the part of me is thinking that this is possible partly just because of the geography, and it's just the community is identifiable, but also that the trust allows that type of role to sit with a few people who can represent, allowing other people to focus on, say, school day-to-day stuff. Because one of the things I think some head teachers listening to us will be thinking, well, like this is almost like an unattainable goal, to be the kind of community player, at the same time as thinking about curriculum, behavior management, assessment, teaching and learning. And it's like the job is massive. So, I mean, do you think that's what that does? That the CEO and the trust level people have that outward facing role, but not everybody has to.
And I think that's exactly it, because actually, Adrian would argue, actually, I'll turn up to the opening of that envelope so that you can carry on making sure that I can tell them and promise them that their child's going to get the absolute best deal when they walk through our doors. They're going to get the best possible wraparound care, and they're going to get the best possible teaching. What we will do as a trust is then make sure that we're immersed in that community. We're a part of that community. We rock up when people want to deliver bad news to us. We reply to any and every email. We meet any and everyone that wants to meet us. And it's great, because sometimes community engagement sounds really glamorous and really nice when things are going well. Community engagement is also incredibly difficult when things aren't going well, but you've got to face the music. And for us, it's about making sure we're there throughout that time.
Can you give us a flavour of the sorts of things which might constitute difficulties then, without, don't about
good times and bad times? We stand without, like with this.
What sort of bad times might there be? What sorts of things happen that are challenging?
I think challenging, taking on difficult schools in difficult contexts that perhaps have been neglected historically for a long period of time. The point is, the day you take that school on, every problem in that school is your problem. It's a bit like you can't sit there blaming the previous government for all of your issues of the day. You've got to take ownership of them. And I think we accept the fact that the moment they're our school, they're our problem. And every problem that exists in that school, in that community, is our problem. And it's only our job and our responsibility to fix them. And facing the music and being there and making sure that we're taking action. So it's not just about lip service and delivering really good rhetoric. It's about making sure we go back and we deliver on it. And I think that element takes courage. We use language, which is really important. So our values are incredibly important. But for us, we're stewards of our schools. We accept the fact that that's a massive responsibility. Our schools aren't schools in a box that are about Chiltern. Cholney High School for Boys is Cholney High School for Boys. It happens to be in Chiltern Learning Trust. It has its own community. It's in its own area. We don't want it to be a clone of any other school. We've got to get to know that community in that area. And that's going to be very nuanced and different in another area. And in a place like Bedfordshire, you could be in a Luton school where there's 98, 99% Pakistani community in one school, and you can go 3 miles down the road and it's 99% white British, and another school, very mixed. And it's about making sure that we embrace all communities and we invest our energy in ensuring all of them feel represented and listened to at all times.
It sounds like, Sufian, that you do, as an organisation, really big thinking, really big ideas, real big, but with this kind of meticulous attention to detail about what actually needs to be done, but then done with real genuine care for the communities that you're serving. It doesn't, there's, like you said, there's so many kind of strap lines that you hear, and, you know, we're about this, and this is our model, and this is the way we do it. It's so refreshing to listen to you talk about being innovative and being different, but that thing about replying to every single email, that real attention to detail, that's how you build relationships, isn't it? It's that care and attention to detail and listening to people.
And that is, the other day, we had a really important meeting. We had Ofsted in one of our schools. We had a lovely friend of ours who had travelled from Manchester to meet with myself and the CEO, Dr. Andy Hodgkinson from UCL. He had driven down to meet, and one of the caretakers in one of our schools was leaving, and he knocked on the door and he said, I'm going to take an opportunity, I'm going to take a chance, because I might not get this opportunity again. I want to pitch a business idea to you guys. Can I disrupt this meeting? And for me, that was the litmus test. If Adrian said, no, we're really busy, we've got it wrong. Adrian said, come in. It doesn't matter what we're doing. We're going to listen to your idea right here, right now. And I think that has to come from the top. There's a lot about culture that's being written at the moment, a lot about belonging. We're doing a lot of work on belonging, but actually belonging can't happen bottom up. It's got to happen from the very top, and it's got to be modeled at the very highest level. And those small moments matter. And I think for us,
his idea? What was his idea?
It's actually amazing. I'm not even joking. It's amazing. I'll tell you why that encounter was really interesting. One was he pitched his idea. He makes his own trainers, and he's a trainer artist. And so he either buys trainers and does art on them and sells them for a lot of money, or he makes them from scratch, absolute trainer from scratch, customizes them. So he wanted to deliver workshops to kids. And he said that actually some of the hardest to engage young people will engage in this form of art, because trainers are something that really appeal to so many young people. But the art part allows them to stop, reflect, take time, be creative. And he also designs basketball courts and does designs on them. So we loved the idea. It was a great idea. The follow-up was, incidentally, and we had a lovely discussion. He recognized me and I recognized him, so I followed him out. And probably 20 plus years ago, he asked the question, are you from the ends, referring to where we lived? And I said, yes. And he said, and I said, I think I recognize you. And we had an altercation in our youth. And it was perhaps when we were both less guided in our lives. But it was really interesting because he said to me at that time, it was quite a serious altercation, but he put his hand on me and he said, I'm so proud of you, what you've become. And I said, I was so proud of what you've become. That neither of us at that stage, living in that part of Luton, some of the challenges around crime, deviance, ASBO behavior, whatever you want to call it, could never have imagined that now I'm 38 and we're going to see each other in that chance coincidence in a meeting like that. But it made me smile.
That's fantastic. I love it. That's
well, genuinely well done.
That's great. It is. It's a beautiful thing. I can see. It's like it's a movie. I can see that. That's great.
Oh, there's a genuine filmic quality about that.
Well, look, I want to ask you a couple of things that some specific things that you've been doing. So one of the things I'm really interested in this. So I feel like I'm trading a lot of stuff coming because Sufian and I have got projects. One of them is this program we're doing next year, but we're also doing a pastoral masterclass event in May, and I asked you to be involved. But then I was really interested in your selection of what you're going to talk about, which obviously, without too many spoilers, but the title you gave was Achievement Through Inclusivity. So what I love about that is that things pitched as pastoral masterclasses. A few people are doing things about behavior management and so on. But you went for achievement. So immediately you're thinking it's about achievement. So this to me is just like such rich material for schools to explore. What is the connection between being inclusive and achievement? How do you see that sort of taking shape?
Getting to know young people. I think one of the things is I was a young Pakistani boy in Luton, and in my head, as I said, the one thing probably I still work with teachers that taught me. The person who employed me and was my first manager in my current role was also my French teacher in school. So I have the good fortune. I'm probably someone that, I don't know, I probably had the same level of confidence. I reckon I backed myself throughout school as well. And unfortunately, I wasn't that bright either, but I still probably fancied my chances on acing anything and everything I put my hand to. And it made me reflect that one of the things where I worked best and where I achieved most in my life was when teachers understood me. And I wasn't the best behaved child. I wasn't the worst either, but connections and rapport around behavior management are often forgotten because you can be really rigid and you can be hardcore kind of, I don't know, regimented in your approaches. And I think about things like that and I get slightly upset because actually as a poor kid from a poor family, I never had a holiday in my first 19 years of my life. I'd never been on a holiday. We used to walk to school, and Abid, who is one of our assistant heads, we went to nursery, infants, juniors together. And I remember walking to school and we used to say after summer holidays, we used to say, where are you going to say you went? He said, oh, because we knew the teacher would ask, where did you go for the holiday? And I remember I said, I'm going to say Russia. And he said, what about, I'm going to say Sweden. And the problem was that the teacher would say, oh, that's great. What was Russia like? I was like, I don't want to talk about it because there was no Google, and Inkata 95 didn't give enough information to me about. It didn't give me enough information to be able to delve into details about my holiday in Moscow. But I think for me, it was the lack of understanding people had of what it was like being me, what was it like being a Pakistani kid in Luton, what was it like being a poor kid in Luton. And inclusivity is not just about race. I think the poverty element is really big. It's knowing what it's like. And I said this to someone recently, and we took on a school. And I remember when I first qualified to teach, I was still a delivery driver for a takeaway for 3-4 years, because I started supporting my whole family. And one of the things you learn as a delivery driver is when you go to apartment blocks in really poor parts, is the smell in elevators. And it's a unique smell, but it's a smell that some child, that the first thing that's going to happen in the morning is that's their experience. That's the smell that they're going to smell as they come down. The same elevators that I felt I couldn't touch my finger on those buttons, and I have to kind of put my elbow to press it. They have to press it, come down, stand in that elevator with the smell of urine, and then make their way through into school. And my point to one of my colleagues was, how can you set behavior right until you walk that with us? We're going to walk the estate. We're going to go up the elevator. We're going to smell that smell. We're going to understand what it is like to take that journey as that kid in that school. So understanding the dynamics, understanding the young people is really important, because I think when teachers understand them and that rapport is built, with rapport comes respect. With respect, you're able to build ambition and aspiration. And with ambition and aspiration comes achievement. And I think for me, that element and that sequence is really important. If you put me in silent corridors when I was younger, I never had friends outside. We never had the opportunity. I had never interacted with anyone white for a number of years, because I went to a school that was densely populated with Pakistani children. I went to a primary school like that, a secondary school like that. Well, if I couldn't talk to Ian in the corridor, the white kid that did go to our school, when am I going to have these rich experiences, understanding people have different lives? If my teachers didn't talk to me and it was all about sit up straight and I wasn't able to have those interactions, someone like me from that background, that poor background, that ethnic minority background, I would have lost a lot of richness, because I always hear people talk about the worst school, the worst meals they had. Every other teacher I talk to, they say, oh my God, my school meals were awful. Try talking to a Pakistani poor kid in Luton. They were like, school meals were the best thing we ever had. That was like the best meals. I go to a place in East London called School Dinners, and that's made up by someone from a Pakistani background, because actually we all have that feeling about them, because taking that away and taking that richness away, it can't lead to achievement. And it's artificial achievement. You might get me through exams, but you're not going to give me hope and aspiration to become something in my life.
Yeah. I mean, this is, you know, I mean, I can only imagine that kind of context, because it is so different from mine, and so I can sort of, it's so interesting here you share it. If I was your teacher, though, how much do I need to know about that? Like, you know, because it's so, some of that's so personal. Do you think there are some children even from a similar background to you going to school sort of who don't want everyone to know that, who want to sort of be like, you know, that's private to me? Or do you think teachers should invest in knowing that kind of detail? I think that's an interesting thing, isn't it?
I think the difference is knowledge acquisition. You can write on a whiteboard and I can copy it and I can read it. I will acquire knowledge without you having to do anything. Ambition, though, when you say an ambitious curriculum, aspiration comes through people motivating and inspiring. That's the management of a great curriculum can happen, and the acquisition of knowledge can happen, and I can get through and I can succeed in my exams. But if I have no one in my life that's been to university, if I have no one in my life that's worn a suit for a job, if I have no way of knowing how to aspire to bigger things, if there's nobody that's building that rapport with me and inspiring me, I think and you can't inspire, and that's my belief. You will struggle to inspire if you don't know where my starting base is, if you don't know what my challenges are. I feel I walk into schools and I feel like I can inspire certain young people because they're able to relate sometimes with that element that, okay, that's Sufian, he's from the community, he also lives on this road and he also has been through what we went through, he gets it. And that getting it makes that rapport building for inspiration and aspiration so much more realistic. So it's not to say that you can't, and it's not to say that that's teachers' roles. It's to say that actually for some young people, and it's often those that are from poorer backgrounds, they don't have access to aspiration and inspiration in the way they have it. My children have a very different life. My children go on holiday. My children, by the age they were 1, had a richer life experiences than I had in my first 19 years. They had done more things by the age of 1 than I had in most of my life as a young person. So it's different because they'll access through friends coming home and the people I interact with, they'll see inspiration, aspiration. But the poorer children, will they have that same richness in their lives? Perhaps not. And I think that's where teachers do need to know what it's like to be a child in that community.
It's about sustainability, isn't it? Because you can teach to the end of your lesson, you can teach to the end of the curriculum, you can get children to connect knowledge to knowledge and make that connection in a kind of cognitive sense. But actually, if you want a truly sustainable education model where they go on to actually use what they've learned and to build on that it's a different sort of connection, isn't it? It's not a cognitive connection, it's a connection with the students in your class. And if you don't get that connection, there's not going to be that sustainable model where they pick up that information and want to run with it or feel like they can run with it.
And that's spot on. And it sounds, I know, without opening the can of worms around safeguarding and everything, but when I think of a movie, Dangerous Minds and Coolio's Gangster's Paradise, that for me, that was the connection. That she got it. She got what it was like to be a young person, and that was inspiration. And even Matilda and all the nonsense around safeguarding around Matilda, it was sometimes you've just got to understand and know what it's like in the life of that child. And for me, it's about...
Tell me, all this inspirational talk was inspired by Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yes.
that's great. That's
Gangster's Paradise.
Yeah, amazing. But I think it's so wonderful. And what I'm thinking from what you're saying is this, because I feel like, you know, you're one of a kind, and not every school can have a Sufian Sadiq in their midst. But I feel like this is one of the things this is why there's that cliche about it takes a village to raise a child, and a trust, a group of teachers, a community of people. You know, it has to have these sort of people, like different people bringing their thing to it, doesn't it? And I feel like not every teacher can do what you do or be you, but there's something to celebrate about creating that in the community. And without you in that mix, your trust would be poorer for it. But I think I just think it's inspiring. It's like you need to clone yourself somehow.
Oh,
I've worked on two. I've got two little clones. I'm hoping that
done very well so far, because we've been going nearly an hour and they haven't come through the door yet. So it's doing
no.
Can I just ask one more thing? I just wanted to ask Sufian about your big event in July. I don't know whether you wanted to mention what's going on there, because it sounds like the most wonderful gathering of brilliant people.
So similar to, if I wasn't a teacher, I'd be a salesman. And
Really?
yeah, be no surprise. And one thing I remember when we did the series during COVID, and I was relatively new in terms of to teacher Twitter. But what I did was I went through and I thought, right, I'm just going to look at who's really popular. I'm going to make a spreadsheet, and then I'm going to contact them. And I don't care if they don't know me, but the worst thing they can say is no. But I'm just going to make a really compelling reason why they ought to be there. And I would say to everyone, also invited I didn't say they agreed. So I used Tom's name a lot. And then then what happened was everyone thought if it was Tom's there, then I'm going to be there. And then it was like this snowball. And I thought, then I had people contacting me saying, I want to be at your event. We want to do a CPD. Why weren't we invited to do a CPD? And I think I'm okay to go straight into your DMs and say to you, I really want you to deliver a presentation for us. And I'm okay with you saying no, but I'm also okay with coming back, even once you've said no, to say, I will eventually get you. You are coming at some stage, just not now. I believe in the power of yet.
Tell people what this event is.
The event started off as, we said, racial equity network dinner. We said, right, what we want to do is one of the things that I feel that we learned from some of the work we did, so the work around BAME into leadership, it kind of preceded me. Lorraine has been a real instrumental lead in the way she developed that, and that some of that helped bring me in, and that she kind of was instrumental in bringing me into the organization. And it was about, right, how do you get more representation of people from ethnic minority backgrounds into leadership? The network dinner was born out of that. And what we realized was actually there is an old boys network, whether we like it or not. And the networks exist, whether you call it an old boys network or whether you glam it up as something else. People tend to say, I know a good history teacher in the locality, I'll give them a call. Now, if everyone that's predominantly white mixes with lots of other white friends, which is common and happens between circles, so the Pakistani community will mix with lots of other Pakistanis because people have more in common and they are friends. If the same is happening, even unconsciously, unknowingly, networks remain very similar. They look very similar to you, and the people you invite to interview, you encourage to apply, will look like you. So what we wanted to do was say, right, how can we flip that? How can we get influential people in the education system, especially those with CEOs and head teachers that can recruit? How do we get the right people in front of them? So give BAME staff the opportunity to rock up somewhere and develop that network, because we know the power of networks is what helps people get the jobs. And that started off with 20 people in a restaurant to 80 people the following year, 120, and last year we were at 350. And yes, I work on that mission, which is I want 400 plus now, and I want it to be the biggest. But actually, I actually said when we had 40 people together, I said it's the largest national thing. I don't know if it was, but it bloody better be now.
Well, I'll tell you what, Sufian. Let me publicly give my RSVP now. I'm coming.
Brilliant.
I would come, but I'm in Crete, and it's a bit of a long commute from Crete.
It's a Friday night in July. I'll be there. Well, look, that's why I love doing this podcast. You're just blowing me away. They're absolutely fantastic. You're a total diamond, a genius, an inspiration, and I just. It's amazing. So I wanted to say thank you for everything you're doing. It's wonderful to know you and great to work with Chiltern Learning Trust. Looking forward to doing more work together later. Thank you for joining us on this podcast. It's been a real treat. And I hope people follow on Twitter, get involved with the stuff that you're doing, and watch out for your DMs. You're going to get invited to do stuff. So a big thank you to Sufian Sadiq on this episode. And thank you to everyone listening to Mind the Gap. We've had a great run of guests. Thank you for listening. We're really thrilled by the response we're getting, and keep listening to more. So we'll see you on YouTube or on the podcast platform that you're listening to now. See you soon. Thank you very much, everybody.